What if I told you that the person who hurt you the most remembers every detail of what they did? Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But here's what Jung did not explain in that well-known quote. What I'm about to share may challenge many of the assumptions you've made about people who refuse to admit their mistakes. By the end of this, you'll understand why some individuals sleep peacefully at night while you lie awake, replaying every word, every moment, every expression of pain that crossed your face when they betrayed you. Let's begin with a difficult truth. They remember it all. The person who broke your trust, who made you question your own reality, who left you feeling confused and unstable, remembers every detail. Every sentence they spoke, every promise they failed to keep, every moment they saw you struggle under the weight of their actions. According to Carl Jung's theory of the shadow self, each of us carries parts of our personality that we prefer not to face. Through years of clinical practice, Jung observed that the more we push these uncomfortable aspects away, the more influence they gain over our behavior. But here is the deeper issue. The people who hurt you are not dealing with forgetfulness. They are engaging in something more deliberate. Jung referred to it as shadow projection, the unconscious process of rejecting their own flaws and placing them onto someone else. There is another unsettling part of this pattern. If you have ever wondered how someone can disrupt your peace and then continue their day as if nothing occurred, this perspective may shift how you understand human behavior. Carl Jung also said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what happens when one person refuses that transformation? What happens when someone chooses comfort instead of awareness, denial instead of growth? They do not simply forget. They decide not to remember. Because remembering would demand something many people are not ready to face: true accountability. And accountability, as Carl Jung discovered through his groundbreaking work with patients, requires the most frightening step of all real change. Jung wrote in his personal letters, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." The people who hurt you often build their entire identity around avoiding that fear. They construct complex psychological defenses to escape the very process that could free them. So what are they attached to instead? Comfort, ego protection. Denial wrapped in polite phrases like, "I don't remember it that way," or "You're being too sensitive." Through decades of research, Jung observed that the human psyche will go to extreme lengths to defend its self-image. He called this defense the persona, the mask we wear to hide our true nature, not only from others but from ourselves. According to Jung's clinical insights, when someone hurts you and then behaves as if nothing happened, they're not simply lying. They're preserving what he described as a provisional life. A psychological state where a person avoids the deeper work of becoming authentic by remaining constantly comfortable, constantly justified, constantly innocent. And here's where it becomes unsettling. This may make you rethink every interaction you've had with someone who refuses to admit wrongdoing. Jung said, "What you resist persists." But he uncovered something even more troubling. Some individuals have mastered the skill of turning their resistance into your problem. When someone harms you and then pretends nothing occurred, they're not just shielding themselves, they're destabilizing you. They cause you to doubt your memory, your response, your entire emotional experience. Maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I'm being too dramatic. Pause there. According to Jung's extensive work on psychological manipulation, this is exactly what happens when a person's shadow encounters accountability. They don't respond with remorse, they respond with avoidance. They don't accept responsibility, they redirect it. They don't address the wound, they make you question whether you were hurt at all. Jung referred to this as psychological projection. Today, modern psychology often recognizes it as a form of gaslighting, making you doubt your perception of reality to protect their self-image. Jung made a profound observation about human development. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Yet some people discover a different privilege. the ability to never become anything at all by perfecting the art of strategic silence. Their silence isn't accidental. It isn't passive. It isn't even truly silence, it's a tool. And understanding this tool explains why you felt confused, unstable, desperate for closure that never arrived, and why they seem empowered while you feel diminished. When someone hurts you and then withdraws into silence, that silence is not emptiness. It is control. Jung wrote extensively about power dynamics in relationships, and he understood something many overlook. Silence shifts the weight of confusion onto the person already in pain. Consider what happens. When they say nothing, you start saying everything. You replay conversations repeatedly. You over-explain your feelings. You question your reactions. You wait for a reply that never comes. You analyze every word, every gesture, every interaction, searching for signs of regret that simply aren't there. That isn't random. It's the strategy. Jung stated, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." But these individuals build their identity on looking outward, projecting their shadow onto you, placing the burden of their unresolved guilt on your shoulders while they walk away untouched. In his research on what he termed unconscious competence, Jung observed that some people become highly skilled at emotional manipulation without consciously deciding to do so. They develop an instinctive ability to transfer emotional labor to others while protecting themselves from consequences. Here is the most striking part about those who use silence strategically. Jung discovered that silence, when used deliberately, creates what he described as psychological dependency. The more someone withholds the acknowledgement you need, the more intensely you crave any response. That desperation serves their interests. It places you in pursuit. It softens your boundaries. It pressures you to compromise your truth just to receive minimal attention. It can even make you thankful for fragments of acknowledgement from the very person who should be seeking your forgiveness. Jung wrote, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. But those who weaponize silence redirect your focus. Instead of entering your own cave of self-worth, you remain fixated on their empty cave of non-response." In Jung's work on the collective unconscious, he described shared archetypal patterns within all of us. One of the most destructive is the innocent archetype, the part of the psyche that refuses to admit its capacity to cause harm. Yet Jung noted that some individuals don't access this archetype occasionally. They inhabit it permanently. Innocence becomes their identity, which means they can never be wrong. Here is what may surprise you about people who cannot apologize. In Jung's personal analyses of his most challenging patients, he found that those who consistently avoid responsibility often develop unconscious competence in emotional manipulation. They are not randomly causing harm and then forgetting it. They have, without awareness, refined the ability to hurt others while shielding themselves from consequences. Jung's clinical notes describe this as psychological inflation, a condition in which the ego grows so large that it cannot tolerate information that challenges its self-image. When you ask someone in this state for accountability, you are not merely requesting an apology. You are asking them to reduce their entire sense of self. That is why they cannot do it. When tension arises, when emotions surface, when responsibility is required, observe the pattern. They disappear. They fall silent. They redirect the topic. They post cheerful updates on social media. They surround themselves with supporters who reinforce their version of events. This is not overwhelm. It is repetition. It is not confusion. It is design. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These individuals have not made their destructive habits conscious. Instead, they have made them systematic, predictable, and remarkably effective. There is an even darker element to this behavior. Jung's research into complex psychology sheds light on how they maintain peace of mind. He spent years studying psychological complexes, independent clusters of thoughts and emotions that function outside conscious awareness. But his findings extended beyond simple compartmentalization. According to Jung's observations, people who habitually avoid accountability may develop what he described as dissociative competence. They separate their actions from their identity so completely that they genuinely believe they are not responsible for the harm they cause. It is not that they forgot hurting you. It is that they convinced themselves they had no alternative, that you forced their behavior, that they were the true victim. Their defenses become so advanced that they revise events in real time, casting themselves as the hero in stories where they were, in fact, the antagonist. Jung cautioned, "The most dangerous thing is to live in a world of projections." These individuals do more than live in such a world. They construct an entire reality in which they are always correct, always justified, always misunderstood. Jung reminded us, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But genuine emotional maturity demands something many resist, the courage to confront one's own capacity for harm. And that is precisely why you continue to be hurt by people who cannot process guilt. Now here is the question that changes everything. Why are some people truly incapable of offering a sincere apology? And Jung's research into what he called shadow integration uncovers a difficult truth about this pattern. Carl Jung observed that guilt, when processed in a healthy way, actually serves as guidance. It is the part of the psyche that says, "Something I did hurt someone I care about, and I need to repair it." He described this as the moral function of the unconscious, the aspect of us that seeks balance, fairness, and restoration. But individuals who lack emotional maturity do not experience guilt as guidance. They interpret it as an attack. To them, it feels like a threat to their very identity. In Jung's clinical work with patients who struggled to take responsibility, he noticed a consistent pattern. These individuals never learned to separate what they did from who they are. Within their psychological structure, admitting wrongdoing does not simply mean they made a mistake. It means they are the mistake. That inner collapse feels too dangerous for their fragile sense of self. So instead of tolerating the discomfort required for growth, they shift the focus onto you. Rather than confronting their own shadow, they project it outward. Instead of doing the work of integration, they choose the temporary safety of denial. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." These individuals take the opposite route. They keep their darkness unconscious by placing it on you. Jung also recognized something important about people who repeatedly avoid shadow work. This insight explains why calmly addressing someone's behavior can suddenly make you feel like you are in a conflict you never intended to start. Jung described ego defense mechanisms as strategies the mind uses to protect itself from threatening information. But he also saw that some people turn these defenses into a permanent way of operating. When you ask for accountability from someone who has built their identity around avoiding responsibility, you are not simply requesting an apology. You are asking them to dismantle the very structure that protects their ego. According to Jung's clinical observations, people in this state do not register your pain as useful information. They interpret it as aggression. Your request for clarity becomes a confrontation. Your openness becomes something to exploit. Your truth becomes something they must defeat. Carl Jung noted that such individuals spend so much effort reinforcing their ego defenses that they lose touch with empathy. They cannot sit with your pain because they have never learned to sit with their own. He referred to this as psychological rigidity, an inability to adapt, evolve, or respond to new insight. They remain stuck in what he called the provisional life, continually avoiding the deeper process of becoming who they truly are. Here is one of Jung's most essential insights about emotional development. It clarifies why you may expect depth from people who consistently operate at the surface level. Jung understood that not everyone functions at the same stage of emotional growth. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. But what happens when one of those substances is emotionally inactive?" In Jung's developmental view, some individuals reach their emotional limit long before they reach honesty. They may offer excuses. They may withdraw into silence. They may distract or deflect. But they will not provide what you genuinely need: sincere acknowledgement. The apology you never received is not a measure of your value. It reflects their limitation. Their emotional capacity stopped short of accountability. Jung emphasized that real apologies require more than language. They require psychological integration, the capacity to hold both light and shadow, good intentions and harmful outcomes, love and the potential to cause pain. Not everyone has achieved this level of integration. Some remain in what Jung called psychological inflation, a condition in which the ego becomes so expanded that it cannot tolerate any challenge to its self-image. Carl Jung also observed that psychological patterns repeat until they are brought into awareness. But what happens when someone is committed to keeping those patterns unconscious? Understanding these unconscious cycles helps you recognize them before becoming entangled. Jung warned about repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to repeat familiar behaviors even when they are destructive. People who hurt others without remorse are not acting randomly. They are following an unconscious pattern that supports their psychological needs. Jung found that such individuals repeatedly choose environments that protect their illusions. They surround themselves with people who do not question them, friends who agree, partners who avoid confrontation. They construct psychological echo chambers that keep genuine self-reflection at a distance. Because once they look honestly at themselves, the illusion begins to fracture, the illusion that they are harmless, that they were simply doing their best, that others are overly sensitive or demanding. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Many people organize their lives around avoiding that fear. They develop what Jung described as unconscious competence in emotional avoidance. They can hurt someone and instantly create a narrative that removes all responsibility from themselves. Here is one of the most freeing insights Jung offered about difficult relationships. You cannot force an unconscious person into awareness. You cannot make someone see what they are determined not to see. You cannot love someone into emotional maturity if they are committed to remaining immature. In his later reflections on relationships, Jung suggested that a profound act of self-respect is recognizing that some individuals will never give you what you need. Not because you are unworthy, but because they lack the psychological capacity to provide it. Their refusal to apologize, to take responsibility, or to acknowledge your experience is not a reflection of your value. It is information about their developmental stage. It shows you who they are at their current level of psychological evolution. Jung compared seeking accountability from an emotionally unavailable person to drawing water from an empty well. The well is not damaged, it is simply dry. No amount of patience, persistence, or affection can produce water where none exists. Carl Jung devoted his career to encouraging people to integrate their shadow, to become whole, and to face themselves honestly. But he also understood something critical: this process is voluntary. No one can be forced into consciousness. Jung stated, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Those who hurt you and act as though nothing occurred are still looking outward. They continue projecting, avoiding reflection, and resisting awareness. You, however, have been doing the internal work. You have been seeking truth, accountability, healing, and growth. You have been awake in a dynamic with someone who chose to remain unaware." One of Jung's most meaningful insights is this: your healing does not depend on their awakening. Your closure does not require their awareness. Your peace does not need their approval. Your worth does not rely on their validation. The person who hurt you and behaves as if nothing happened is not confused. They remember. They simply do not have the psychological structure to confront their own actions. So the path forward becomes clear. Stop waiting for them to change. Stop explaining your pain to people who benefit from misunderstanding it. Stop carrying the emotional weight in relationships where you are the only one investing effort. Jung repeated, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But there is also freedom in accepting others completely, including their limits, their unconscious patterns, and their resistance to growth. When you stop trying to awaken those who refuse awareness, you create space for relationships with individuals who are already conscious. When you stop waiting for emotional immaturity to transform, You make room for emotional intelligence to enter your life. The objective is not to awaken everyone. It is to become conscious enough to safeguard your own peace from those unwilling to do their inner work. That is authentic shadow work. That is integration. That is freedom. Carl Jung also wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to greater self-understanding. Those who hurt you without remorse have taught you something essential about your resilience, your value, and your ability to heal. They have clarified what you will no longer accept. They have revealed what truly matters to you. They have confirmed that your peace deserves protection. There is insight within that wound, the recognition that you deserve relationships with people who meet you at your level of emotional development, who can tolerate discomfort, confront their shadow, and grow alongside you. The apology you never received was not about you. It reflected their ceiling, their constraints, and their choice to remain unconscious. Your healing, your growth, and your freedom, that belongs to you. And that is where your strength resides. Jung expressed it clearly. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You already know who you are. You are someone who faces truth, seeks accountability, and values growth, healing, and genuine connection. That is the standard you should expect in return. Thank you for staying through this discussion. If you found this perspective helpful, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this video with someone who may benefit from it.